Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Nonobvious Virtual Summit on the Future of Marketing. I'm Angela Long, Chief Brand Officer of AMA-DC, the Washington, D.C. chapter of the American Marketing Association. AMA is the professional association for marketing professionals with more than 30,000 members in 76 chapters across the U.S. We offer programming, resources, all to help marketers stay on top of their game. I'm really excited to be here this afternoon with Rohit Bhargava, who's happy to collaborate with us today on this event in honor of Marketing Week. So we're thrilled to be with you this afternoon. I have a couple words to talk about the pandemic, or do you want to jump in, Rohit?
Yeah, I would love to jump in. I mean, this is such a great topic. I mean, the future of marketing, getting marketers together is like one of my favorite audiences in the world, and it's been so great to collaborate with you, Angela, and the whole team at AMA-DC to put on the event and really bring a lot of speakers from different parts of marketing to focus on the future. And I know it's this kind of moment of, yes, disruption and chaos and all of that stuff, but we have an amazing agenda set up for you today. So our intro session here, which we're going to be shortly bringing Russ Klein on, who's the president of the AMA overall, who's going to be talking to us about the future of marketing and kind of what he's seeing and what he's hearing from marketers really around the world, is going to be a kind of a kickoff session. Then I'm going to do a very short presentation on some of my own trend research, my non-obvious megatrends, as I often describe them and call them. And then leading from there, we have a number of different interviews that are scheduled with YouTube Premiere. So basically what you will have to do is just go to the YouTube channel, and we'll share the link and all that stuff, but you're literally on it right now if you're watching on YouTube. If you're watching on another platform, you will need to move over to YouTube to watch the premieres, but it's super easy to find, and you'll be able to watch interviews with amazing speakers, including Rebecca Messina, who's the former CMO of Uber and now is currently with McKinsey and works with lots of marketers in many different industries. We've got a fantastic CMO panel planned, which Angela is going to tell you about in a second. We've got a bunch of other speakers that you might recognize. Charlene Lee, Guy Kawasaki, Janal Shah, who works with Feather, which is a furniture rental startup. I mean, some great content. So I can't wait to share all of these insights with you. I'm so excited. And Angela, why don't you tell us about kind of what's going to happen right after that whole session?
So at 4 o'clock, thanks for that, Rohit. We're going to actually head over to Zoom. So we're going to leave this particular channel. And we will start with that CMO panel that you just talked about. We'll be moderating a fabulous panel with Bill Kirkos from Honeywell, Sapanta Bhagarpur from Nando's, and Katya Anderson from Capital One, and really talk about the state of marketing at their companies and what shifts that they're going through in this new normal. We'll then do a recap briefly with you and then head into a much needed happy hour at the end of the day. Do you want to talk about tomorrow at all, or kind of leave everyone?
Yeah, so that's kind of a unique thing. So we have not done, well, at least I haven't. I've done a ton of these virtual events. Like I've been kind of keeping track. It's been more than 100 since the pandemic started. So it's been crazy with virtual events. But one of the things that we realized over time, and we were kind of strategizing with the AMA team about this, is you have all of this jam-packed content. You have lots and lots of learning. And then what happens is you kind of go off and you have to figure out what to do with it yourself. Mm-hmm. And so instead of doing that, we came up with this really interesting idea to do a kind of morning after recap session. And so those of you who are registered through the AMA, you'll be able to join us tomorrow, Friday, to go through kind of a brainstorm of like, what did we hear yesterday? What's got your mind spinning? Like, what are you going to do next? Which is such a cool thing that I think sometimes would happen in person when we would like go back to the office after going to a full day event. But like now that we're all virtual, it's kind of missing. So we wanted to try and recreate that. So that's going to be an experiment for us. And I think it's going to be amazing. So if you are registered, you will be given an invite to join us there. It's going to be a lot of fun and hopefully a great conversation. So I'm so excited about that.
And following up, we'll actually have a yoga session, maybe new and different, or not so much in the pandemic. We've got a residential yogi. I'm at AMA-DC, Arthur Uritani. You're not going to want to miss that either. That'll be after the breakout, the conversation, the breakfast conversation. So are you ready to roll with Russ? I think he's in the back room, ready to.
I am, yes. Let's bring Russ Klein into the stream, and there he is. Welcome, Russ. It is so awesome to have you.
Rohit, great to see you, and Angela, great to see you. And for those of you who may not know, the Washington, D.C. AMA chapter is among our elite chapters. And so if you're in that area, get involved with the AMA. It's a great chapter.
That is an awesome plug. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, I am actually in the DC area. So we are local here, even though Angela and I are widely separated by, I don't know, what, 10 miles or something like that.
It's a huge expanse, yeah.
Yeah, so we're basically neighbors. But thank you, Russ. That is amazing. So Angela, we will say bye to you for now,
All right.
and we will bring you back on a little bit later on. And Russ, we are now having our kind of moment in the sun. And I thought about what I wanted to talk to you about kind of starting off. And I think that you've got this unique vantage point because of what you do, where you get to interact with so many different marketers in so many different industries, and perhaps have an opportunity to look at our industry on a macro level. And I wonder if you could kind of think about it under that umbrella. What are you hearing from people when it comes to thinking about how they're marketing right now, how things have changed for them? What's on their mind?
Well, I think there's two layers to that, Rohit. One is sort of the professional demeanor of the marketing community, and it's impossible to separate that from the personal demeanor of the marketing community, because they're experiencing the same thing the rest of the world is, whether it's dents in their employment, whether it's the fear and overwhelming sense or uncertainty around what they can do to protect their families, to pay their mortgage, and so I think there's a tremendous level of anxiety in both the professional marketer, the professional side of that marketer out there, and the personal side. And in fact, the other day, I saw the chief knowledge officer of Kantar do a really great webcast, and pointing out that the gap between people who are happy to take some risks for a chance to enjoy greater rewards versus the people who prefer to play it safe and not take unnecessary risks is wider than it has ever been since Kantar has been tracking it. And it's like 2 to 1 almost in terms of those folks who are just really kind of in a play it safe mode. And yet,
so the two is the play it safe people. They're outnumbering the risky ones, kind of 2 to 1. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And so that's interesting, because I think a big point of dialogue for many people when it comes to marketing, and I've actually been called by journalists and reporters. In fact, I was called by a reporter who was doing an article, I think for Time magazine, and the question she was writing about is, should people be marketing right now? And I wonder if under that lens, do you feel like marketing is risky right now, or maybe riskier than it has been in the past? Or is it kind of the same thing it always was? We just need to have the right message.
Well, the last thing you said is, of course, true. The disposition of people's view about marketing, whether it's an investment or an expense, is probably something that they had a point of view on before all of this, and they probably are bringing that point of view into this period of time. And so people who've always thought of marketing as an expense, unfortunately, I think funding, headcount, and so forth are going to be unnecessarily or disproportionately punished. Those who see it as an investment, and there are plenty of examples of organizations that have decided to lean in and double down and even use this opportunity to accelerate things. And the CMO survey that Chris Moorman and her team put out every year shows that CMOs are seeing that their CEOs believe marketing is now more important than ever. And that percentages of spending, expected spending behind marketing, are going to be higher than ever. And yet the headcount for marketers in their organizations are all going down. So there's an expectation to do more marketing with fewer marketers.
It's so interesting that that's kind of what the studies are finding, and I kind of wonder, and maybe for those of you who are watching live, if you want to kind of share any comments or anything like that on any of the platforms. Most of them do come into the platform we're using to stream, so we're going to try and address some of those if we can, and if they come in time. But I wonder if that tracks with what you're finding in your own experience. I mean, are you finding that the budgets are the willingness of leadership is to put more budget behind these things, but not behind the resources and the headcount for that? I'm just curious whether people are finding that. And related to that, Russ, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about one of the beautiful things about the audience that we're drawing here, because of the AMA community, is that you have some people who are going to be on the brand side, who are kind of looking at this challenge of doing two people's job with one person's time. And on the flip side, you have the people who are in the services side, the agencies, who are looking at that and saying, well, obviously, if you have to do all of this stuff and you can't hire someone, maybe you should bring in outside help, i.e. us, right? So talk a little bit about the agency landscape in this type of environment. Is this reluctance on the part of brands to hire more marketing people leading to more of them turning to agencies or services people to kind of help fill that gap?
That's a great insight, Rohit. I think it should present an opportunity. The opportunity to bring in an outside resource as an agency. The number of so-called teams of one is a higher percentage of our own membership in our own community than we've ever seen. So the teams of one are growing in terms of the way companies are trying to get by in terms of headcounts, and it should, like a door closes, a window should open for people on the outside to step in the breach and make themselves available, pitching organizations, on the virtues of an agency, project relationship and so forth, because obviously the ability to sort of scale up and scale down when you're using outside resources is part of the allure of using outside resources. So it should present an opportunity based on what we're seeing of all of these teams of ones that are increasing.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that you find in a team of one, and I've personally myself as a marketer, I'm lucky enough to have been in kind of every situation you would imagine. I've been on the brand side, I've been a team of one, I've been in the agency world, and now I'm sort of solo, sometimes touching all of those in different ways. And when you are that team of one, education becomes so much more important in terms of building your own skill set to be able to not necessarily do everything, although sometimes that is the case, but to know how to get the right person, or at least know enough to figure out what not to do, which is one definition of strategy, right? And yes. Without getting too kind of self-referential for the AMA, I know one of the big charges of the organization is to provide a lot of that education. So are you feeling, as the head of this association for the industry, that education has become more important as a part of the AMA, or is it just kind of always been there and it's always the same? I wonder if that's changed recently.
There is no question it's changing in terms of what both members and prospective members say they value in a resource like the AMA. There is a consolidation around two things: education and training, skills development, that are really emerging to be sort of almost like a twin engine of what people want right now from an organization like the AMA. There are a lot of other elements, access to opportunities through networking and so forth, that also are strong factors. But those two now stand clearly above all of the other desired need states, if you will, that exist in the community right now, for sure.
Yeah, and we have a question from Will Trevor that I think relates to this, and I'll just it's on screen here, but he asks, do you think COVID requires the marketer to pivot in terms of the skills and knowledge they need to thrive in this changed environment? Are there skills that you've seen becoming redundant or less relevant? Interesting.
Yeah, well, I have always coached prospective, marketing hopefuls in college or people who are in between jobs, that one of the most important things you can do as sort of an athlete out there is to become versatile. To look for opportunities to cross-train yourself, to expand your learning into into growing areas that maybe aren't your past comfort zones. Because companies now are when they pivot, they are they look for somebody who can adapt, who can sort of reinvent themselves. They would rather have an employee who's versatile, who can make that adaptation, than to have to go through the process of firing and recruiting and rehiring. So that is a really important dimension, that if you've got some gaps, some skill gaps, some learning gaps, and you're employed right now, fortunate enough to be employed, you should be trying to build up and build out your ability to do other different things that may be required of you in the future. So I agree with that, that there is something different needed.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe we could just dig into that a little bit with some specifics and just talk about, when it comes to skills development, are there certain things that you're seeing more demand for? So, for example, just to get really kind of in the weeds, does everybody want more SEO training, right? Does everybody want to get smarter with social media? Is everybody looking for marketing analytics? What are the topics that you're seeing people really hungry for more education about to improve their skills?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's one that we try to continue to calibrate and mirror, if you will, based on what we're hearing from the marketplace. The way we look at professional development overall is employable skills, credentials of accepted value, and personal growth. And when you look at skills development, we see it in three buckets. There's strategic marketing, the branding, the strategy, and so forth. There's the performance marketing, the SEO, email, social, and then there's soft skills. And, you can place your own values on those three different buckets. Some people would say that soft skills is the biggest X factor out there, that people, don't know quite how to find a way to get better, but in fact you can. But there's clearly a desire around employable skills focused on performance marketing. The SEOs, the sort of the downstream, make it happen, a part of an organization.
Yeah, I think that is such an important insight when it comes to what people are willing to invest their time in, and organizations are willing to invest their budget in, right? Because it's kind of this idea of not all training's free, right? And so
Right.
Sometimes people will be investing in their time and effort to do that. And I think that the training is super important, but the conversations are really important as well. And I wonder if maybe we could pivot a little bit just to talk about the role and importance of collaboration right now, because I remember one of the absolute delights of being in the world of agencies and really in the world of marketing in general was the beautiful brainstorm. I used to love these brainstorms. We'd all come together and we'd have a client challenge in the agency world. We'd have a client challenge and we just sit there and come up with these crazy ideas. And to some degree, we're being paid for great creative ideas, and we fed off of one another. That was such an important part of the creative process. And now that's just totally changed. We can't get together. We're trying to figure out how to collaborate virtually and sometimes failing at it, to be honest. I wonder if you could maybe talk about the role of collaboration, and maybe even if you've seen someone or an effective model that's kind of been working for doing this that might help inspire people to say, look, just because we can't get into the same room together doesn't mean we can't realize the power of great brainstormed ideas.
Sure. Well, a collaboration coming into the COVID period was a skill set and a priority in organizations. Before all of this happened, the new circumstances of being virtual only have certainly put a spotlight on it again in a different way, which is, do we have the technology tools that allow us to collaborate? There are some collaboration platforms out there that are better than others. Don't ask me which, because you'll put me in beyond my depth. But there are certainly, there are technology-enabled collaboration platforms. My advice on collaboration in general, because this is a time when people can tend to reflexively turn inward when you're alone, and you tend to get in this sort of heads down mode, and they forget to ask for help. They forget to communicate to somebody else because of the environment that we're all in. And my coaching to my own team has always been that it's not collaboration if it's not early collaboration. Nobody wants to be, told about something before it's launching, right before it's about to hit.
I've been there. I mean, it's not a fun experience, right? It's way too late. You don't have the chance to have an impact. And I totally relate to what you're saying there. It's absolutely true. I mean, I wonder if again the theme for today, which is such an important theme, is looking towards the future of marketing as an industry. And I think that in some ways what people have been looking at this moment in time right now, all of this disruption, as is an opportunity to stop doing the stuff that sucked before, in the most optimistic way, right? Like that we used to do things just because we did them. Our media plans used to have the same stuff in there over and over. And now you're seeing significant disruption in what you might consider the traditions of marketing. I mean, the TV ad buy, the upfront, is one example, totally being disrupted. How much of a budget is invested in certain types of marketing is another example. There's a few brands, I think it was Unilever, but I can't remember exactly what the brand was, but they ended up deciding they didn't need a chief brand officer anymore. And they kind of got rid of that role and said that's going to fold under someone else. And so even disruption in the titles that we use, which is something that I talk about in a few of the other sessions later on in the summit. But I'd like to know from your perspective, like when you think about the future of marketing, what are you optimistic about? Like, what are you really excited about to see in how the industry is responding to this moment of disruption and then kind of preparing itself for the future?
Great question. Please remind me if I forget that question, because there was sort of a two piece to it. One is, this idea that many firms have been put into positions now where, oversimplistically, they might feel like they have nothing left to lose. They have right-sized and downsized to the nub, and it's a perfect opportunity to self-examine and actually say, you know what, we've thrown so many things overboard and cut so many things back. This is the best time for us to think about what we want our future to be, because now is the time to get rid of the balls and chains and the tethers that kept us, in the past, and to look toward the future. There's an agency guy. He's actually more famous than I'm giving him credit for, because I can't remember his name. But he said, never get to a point where you have so much to lose that you can't be reckless. And the idea is I think very important, which is, this is a time where a lot of us feel like, what do we have left to lose? Now is the time to maybe dust off that radical idea we had a year or so ago or 2 years ago, and maybe it's right for now. Maybe this is the time for it. So that's one, point I wanted to get across. In terms of my optimism and what I'm looking forward to in the field of marketing, Rohit, it has been my own observation over the last few years, the increasing intersection between marketing and public policy, and not to be mistaken for politics. There is also that going on. I'm not a fan of that, but I am a fan of the intersection between marketing and public policy. One of the AMA journals, if you're an AMA member, is free access to our AMA Journal of Marketing and Public Policy. There's great content in there that shows how to think about marketing in its most expanded sense. It's not just about commercials and advertising or labels and packaging. Marketing can play such a important role in public policy in the future, and is starting to in a lot of corners. That's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, I do define it in that same way. I mean, I think you're right. That a lot of times marketing as an industry gets minimized into the vertical thing, whatever that thing is, whether it's advertising or PR or any of these things. And sometimes it's like, well, those are all separate things. And I think at the end of the day, really what we're talking about is persuasion, and whether that persuasion comes in order to create some sort of change in public policy, or the persuasion comes to inspire you to go out and buy the thing that I'm trying to promote. At the end of the day, like, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the persuasion and the ability to persuade. And
I would add to that. I agree with that. I would say yes, and meeting needs and thinking ahead. Those are things that marketers do. In our process that public policy needs right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's always needed, right? I mean, if we could just live in a world where more leaders focused on the long term instead of the short term, on a macro level, that would that would make a much better world in general. I think, and there's so many examples of that, whether it's short-termism thinking in terms of quarterly results in business, or short-term thinking when it comes to taking care of the planet. I mean, on every level. Just having more of that long-term vision, so important. I wonder if we could close this conversation. I mean, I feel like we could go for a long time, but we want to keep it tight because we want to keep everything on schedule. That's how we run these virtual events, right? And I wonder if we could close on just this idea of, for the marketers and the communicators who are sitting there watching us right now and kind of thinking about their own day-to-day, and working on their ability to perhaps lead more initiatives, inspire more respect for their profession, for themselves, and kind of win on that constant balancing act of we are leaders in the organization, not just the leaders of the marketing stuff, whatever that marketing stuff is defined to be. How can we take more of that leadership on? How can marketers really get to that place where we all sort of want to be, where we are one of the kind of driving forces behind what our organizations do next?
Yes, great question. And I've thought a lot about this over the years, having been in the C-suite and also being on the agency side, where agencies want a voice at the table with their clients too, on these high level matters. And my answer is always the same. You have to earn a seat at the table. You have to earn a voice. And the way you do that is by showing people that you can think big, that you can think strategically, which is to help companies find advantage, to rearrange their resources or to get new resources, or to change messaging to gain advantage in the marketplace. And so to get that respect, marketers need to be able to read a P&L, read a balance sheet, read a cash flow statement, know what a supply chain is, understand cost structures. These are things that give you the credibility to then bring your own expertise into the conversation. And people, when they know you know what they do and you respect what they do and you can be conversant in what they do, then they'll start to try to become more welcoming, I'm sure, to a marketer who brings that to the table.
Well, that is fantastic. It's a great place for us to end with this part of the session. So I just want to say thank you for spending your time with us. Sure. I know that this is a crazy week for you with Marketing Week and all sorts of demands on your time. So I really appreciate you taking some time and spending it with us here.
You're welcome. Thanks for being interested in what I have to say.
I am always interested in what fellow marketers have to say, and especially your perspective, because it comes from a place of real knowledge. So thank you for that.
Very kind. Thank you.
So we are now on to the last portion of this introductory session. And as a reminder, you're here as part of the AMA Virtual Summit on the future of marketing in partnership with the Nonobvious company. And we are talking about the future of our industry. And what I'd like to do now is give you a little bit of a taste of some of my trend research. And specifically 4 megatrends from my latest book, Nonobvious Megatrends, that I think are going to shape the world of marketing and shape our futures. And so what I'm going to do with the next 15 minutes or so until we finish this session is take you through some of the research and just talk a little bit about what I've spent a lot of time on recently, which is thinking about what comes next. And then what we're going to do is move into some of the featured sessions for the day. So you'll see the playlist off of the YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube right now, if you're not, super easy, just youtube.com/Rohit Bhargava. There's a whole playlist listed there. You'll be able to watch the rest of the videos as they premiere pretty much every 15 minutes. And if you've registered for the event ahead of time, you'll be invited through Zoom to a private conversation where we're going to have an amazing CMO panel followed by a live interactive discussion. And that is going to be for people who are registered specifically. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this. And let's talk about some of the megatrends. And the first thing that I feel like I should make is a little bit of a confession. And my confession is that I am not a futurist. And even though I've spent a lot of time writing about trends and thinking about trends, I never describe myself as a futurist because what I essentially do, and my whole method, is observing the accelerating present. That's what I talk about. And when it comes to observing the accelerating present, I believe that the method that I use allows me to see different stories from different verticals and pull these things together to start to understand what's going to happen in the world next. And that's really what I think about and what I talk about. When I do a presentation, yes, I focus on trends, but my intent with it is never to say, hey, here's me doing all the research and these are the only trends that matter. Instead, what I try and do is I try and give you a process and a methodology to be able to do some of this for yourself. So every year, I've published a new version of this book called Nonobvious Megatrends. And as you'll see here, there's been many different editions of this book over the years. So every year there's been a new version, and there's been 15 new trends coming in that version. And this last one, Nonobvious Megatrends, is the final time that I'm doing it. And if you're curious about some of the trend research or any of this material, you can go right now to nonobvious.com/AMA, which is a specific landing page just for this summit, where you can download an excerpt of the book that has more than 100 of the past trend research. Past trends and the research. So you'll be able to easily get access to all of those. And my goal with this is to try and share with you some of the past insights, but also do it in a transparent way. And so what you'll see there also is a recap of the trends with letter grades against them to see what performed well over time and what didn't. So there's a lot of transparency behind this. And in addition to sharing a deep dive into several of the mega trends, which I'm going to do very shortly, you can get this PDF download as well as access to all of the videos and things that I'm going to be showing in this presentation. So everything's there for you whenever you're ready to get it. Now, a big part of what I talk about and a big part of what I think about is this moment, right? This time of extreme disruption. And I think that when we're in this moment, we have some big questions. And one of the big questions is about this essential nature of how we think about work. Like, are we essential? And this is a topic, by the way, that I cover in a couple of the following interviews, like interviews that come later on in this summit. So we're definitely going to talk about this, but we're also going to talk about, like, should we be marketing now? Like, is this the right moment to be marketing? And what trends should affect what we do and how we think about this? And how do we tell stories virtually? I mean, these are all big questions, right? And they're the questions that we're struggling with right now. And the idea that we can talk about them and use trends to inspire answers for them is really, really valuable. And so let's talk a little bit about the one thing. Like, if I could boil it down, like, people ask me this all the time. They say, look, you spend a lot of time thinking about trends. You spend a lot of time writing about trends. If I could do one thing right now, like, what would it be? What's one trend that matters the most to me? And my answer for the one thing is to try and do what Isaac Asimov talked about, which is be a speed understander, not a speed reader. And I'm going to give you a methodology to do that. Actually, 5 habits specifically to help you do that. But the reason that this matters so much right now in a world surrounded by noise is very simply because of the secret of success, which is, with marketing or with anything else, the people who understand people always win. The people who understand people always win. So how do we gain that level of understanding to be able to survive this moment of chaos, to be able to get people to pay attention to what we want them to pay attention to? Like, how do we do that? Well, these are the mindsets that I try and write about and think about when it comes to helping you figure out how to do that. And there's 5 specifically that I'd like to share with you. And these 5 are based on a lot of the research and workshops and things that I've done over the years around non-obvious megatrends. And they are: be observant, see what others miss; be fickle, learn to move on; be elegant, craft beautiful ideas; be thoughtful, take time to think; and be curious, always ask why. And the best visualization I can think of for why these matter is this very well-known video that you might recognize of the gorilla in between the people passing the basketballs. And if you recognize it, I know you've seen the video and you kind of know the trick. And the trick is that if I showed you this video without the gorilla there and I asked you to count the number of times passing the basketball, and this is kind of an old psychological experiment that someone did a while ago. I should know who the someone is. I kind of do in the back of my head, but it doesn't matter for right now. They did the research and they found that if a gorilla walked through the middle and you were focused on counting the number of passes for the basketball, you wouldn't notice the gorilla. But then when you watch it again and they tell you there's a gorilla, you see it. Now, the video that I'm going to share has a twist on that old research that you may not have seen. So definitely go and watch that video, even if you know this gag. But when I think about the skill set required to spot and understand and curate trends, it's sort of the same skill set you need to see the gorilla the second time. The only skill set you need to see the gorilla the second time is someone telling you it's there. There's no person that is a better gorilla spotter than anyone else once you know that it's there. We all see it. So the question is, how do we train ourselves to pay attention to that gorilla before someone tells us it's there? Because it's not just naturally being better at spotting gorillas. That's not the answer. The answer actually comes from training yourself to see what no one else sees. And that's what I talk about a lot with my method. So part of this method, and I call it my haystack method. And in a moment, I'm going to show you a time-lapse video of 30 seconds of how this method works and how it looks. And basically, the way the method works is I pay attention to details by finding unusual spots, unusual pieces of information. I'm reading magazines that are not targeted at me. I'm taking all of that information and I'm putting it together into curated stacks of concepts, curated themes. And I'll show you the video and I'll just play this for you right now. And I don't think with this platform I'll be able to speak over it. So it might just be some silence, but don't worry, you haven't lost the audio if I do get silence. I'll just play the video right now and then I'll try and speak and see. So I think you can hear me now over it. Hopefully you can. And really what you're watching here is me taking lots of different stories and materials that I've got collected over the course of a year and putting them together into different themes for information. So what you're watching me do here is spot the themes behind lots of different stories that have been clipped off of the internet or magazines or interviews with people in real life back when we used to meet in real life. And in this case, I'm writing what the trend is that all of this ladders up to. It was a trend that I called truthing. Then there's an outline and the outline goes into the book. And in this case, it was the 2018 version of the book. So the idea behind this is that you can collect all this information. And when you do, and when you put all that together, you can start to figure out what it means. You can start to figure out what the trend is. And my definition of a trend is a unique, curated observation of the accelerating present. That's what I believe a trend is, a unique, curated observation of the accelerating present. So to visualize this process for you, I have kind of a unique way of doing it, which is with this image, which was taken at a photo shoot for an article that Microsoft had published about my haystack method. And the reason why it's kind of done in this way is to try and share the method of finding the meaning behind the noise. And in this case, the noise is all the Post-it notes, and it's me looking through that and trying to figure out what it actually means and what it ladders up to. And that's what this visual is meant to do. So we've talked a little bit about how all these pieces fit together. And now with the remaining time we've got together, I want to talk about 4 specific megatrends. And then I'm going to give you some really actionable things that you can do with those megatrends to put them into action. So the first one that I want to share with you is the human mode. And the human mode is the idea that when we have so much technology that surrounds us, we appreciate and long for the more human version of something, the more human connection. So we're watching videos on YouTube, like this one from this awesome group called Now United that has members from lots of different countries around the world, and they do these dance parties online, and they really connect with their audience and with their fans. You have Iceland Tourism running this campaign to let it out, where we just feel the need to scream. And so we can send our scream to Iceland and they'll play it on a loudspeaker somewhere in the wilderness. So at least our scream was out in the world and we could feel like we got heard by screaming. And how to use this trend, and each one of these, by the way, has a practical application for it, is focus on your personality. In this moment right now where we need to feel that authenticity from the organizations, from the companies that we're dealing with, focus on the personality, bring it front and center. Second big trend I want to talk about is instant knowledge. And instant knowledge is this idea that we expect to be able to learn anything faster and get the information we need right in the moment. And there's so many examples of this, including some kind of disturbing ones. Like I was reading this story about an 8-year-old who taught himself to drive on YouTube and then drove to McDonald's because he wanted a burger. I mean, as a father of 2 boys, like that is terrifying and totally realistic to imagine that someone would do that. But it's really, really crazy to think about how quickly we expect now to be able to learn anything, because we can get the information online. We can teach ourselves anything. We can watch these quick, tasty cooking videos and figure out what we're going to make for dinner right in the moment, super, super fast. And in fact, to some degree, this whole thing has inspired one of the first things that I did during the pandemic, which is to write an entire book about working remotely. And this is the new cover of the second edition of the book, which is about to be released. So the first edition of the book's already on Amazon right now, and it came out in May. And it was something that I worked on and wrote right when the pandemic started, because so many people were struggling with, how do I work from home? How do I set up my camera to look decent? How do I do all of these things? And I wanted to write about that, to share some of those insights with people. And that's what inspired this whole thing, to be able to do that. And ultimately what it means, and what the stealable idea here is, to connect people with knowledge. Because if we can connect people with knowledge, if we can do a better job with our content marketing, we can serve that need, and we can help people to figure out what they're trying to figure out in the moment. Next big trend I want to share with you is what I call revivalism. And revivalism is this idea, again, over technology, to say that we want to turn back the clock. We want to go back to things that we remember from our past. I mean, vinyl records, or buying film again, or watching a remake of Back to the Future with the original cast, or Picard, Sir Patrick Stewart going back to be Picard again in this amazing show, which I love. I'm a big Trekkie, so that's like a side note there. Or making puzzles again, including this diabolical campaign from Heinz to create a puzzle with all pieces being exactly the same, which is like totally evil, total evil. Or board games, or old style video games. I mean, all of these things are rediscovering the analog, and it's such an important way to reconnect with this old content. So interesting. And the final trend I want to share with you before we go through some of the big tips for how to use all of these is flux commerce. And flux commerce really is about the lines between industries getting blurred. So Apple, technology company, opened up a credit card. Banks had coffee shops. Crayola started making makeup and got into fashion. Taco Bell opened a hotel. I mean, all of these are examples of disruption by rethinking the industry that you're actually in and shifting that over. And that's such an interesting way to think about the opportunity for your business right now, which is go outside of the industry that you're currently in. So finally, with our remaining time together, before I send you off to watch some of the amazing interviews and rest of the videos from this virtual summit, is I want to share with you some ideas for how to be marketing and what we should do as marketers. So the first one is, be opportunistic with stories and media attention. I mean, when everybody was struggling to get toilet paper and paper towels and all of these things, and then stores were banning people from returning them once they overbought, there was a golden opportunity for anybody who was a nonprofit to say, hey, you overbought this stuff because you panicked. Now you can't return it. Come and donate it to us. And every day there's opportunities like that to jump on the news story, to jump on the media that's happening, and be part of that story by paying attention to what's happening and by moving quickly. The second big thing is to engage the unreachable. Like first, when the pandemic hit, my wife was having her birthday and we couldn't do a birthday party. So I went on to this amazing platform called Cameo, where you can pay celebrities a certain amount of money to record like a 1-minute video directly for you or for anyone else. And I found some of her favorite stars, including several stars from the TV show This Is Us, and I paid them to record a 1-minute birthday greeting. And then we shared that with her, and it was such an amazing way to celebrate her birthday, along with videos from her friends and family who I didn't pay, thankfully, but who still recorded videos. So that was nice. And we put them all together and we stitched it all together. And it was just a great way to celebrate her birthday without being able to have a birthday party. And this was way back in March. So this was right at the beginning. But again, engage the unreachable. Like, I would never have been able to get access to these people otherwise. But now they're all sitting at home. All their filming and production has stopped. And so they're willing to do stuff like this because it just makes somebody's day and it helps them reach their fans. Third big lesson, show your work, go behind the scenes. At the end of every Jackie Chan film, he shows you the outtakes when he screws up all of his stunts. And when he does that, that's such an authentic way of showing the work that went into all of those stunts. And it makes you believe in his talent and his ability to do all these things even more because he's showing you behind the scenes. The fourth thing is get familiar with the tech. I mean, I've been watching a ton of YouTube videos to get my whole setup working here, to get multi-camera angles and all of those things. And now I have them set up, but it took me months of just watching YouTube. Look, I'm not a super technical guy. I'm an English major, but I figured this stuff out because I had to. And I think that we are past the time where anyone can say, oh, I don't understand this technology stuff. I don't have an IT person here to help me figure it out. Declaring that you're hopeless when it comes to technology just doesn't work anymore. You have to be a little bit more technical, and you can do that. And there's really useful YouTube videos to be able to do that. So you really have no excuse. Don't give up on the technology. Learn, get better at it. Fifth big thing, pivot fast to become relevant. There was an amazing story of a bookstore that was forced to close. And so they very quickly pivoted and turned their bookstore into a travel agency. And when you went on the website, they would sell you a trip to Barcelona, which was actually a series of books about Barcelona. So the trip was a bunch of books, but it was a beautiful creative idea on how to engage people. And there was another story here, which you may or may not be able to see. I'll make it a little bit bigger here, of farm animals for virtual meetings. And there was a farm that basically allowed you to pay a fee, and you could have an image of a donkey, and you could have that be one of the participants in your Zoom meeting. So now we just have like a random donkey as part of our Zoom meeting. And let's be honest, we have donkeys already as part of our Zoom meetings. We just call them something different. So at least now you could have an actual donkey, and that would be kind of a fun thing to have. So that was just another great marketing idea. The sixth top tip is talk more often, focus on content and value. I mean, when this pandemic first started, I started doing a ton of these virtual events. Like I said before, I've done more than 100 now over the last several months, and I've learned a lot about how to do them and how to make them engaging and useful. And that's such an important thing because you always have to be learning how to do something that you haven't done before. And the last piece of advice I would offer is just don't panic. I mean, we can figure this out. And that's probably the biggest message of hope that I could offer to you, which is, we can do this. Like, we can figure all of this out, and we can do it in such a way that that we will prepare ourselves for the future. And I think that is something that we can do. So finally, I'll leave you with two last thoughts, and then we want to move off to let you watch some of the other amazing interviews and things that we've got featured during this show, starting with Tom Fishburne, marketunist, amazing cartoonist, who talks about the role of humor with marketing, which is the next presentation up in our summit right after this. So the final thing I'll leave you with before we head off is one last way to get in touch with me, and also one last plug for the email address, for the URL where you can get all of these images, all of the videos, everything like that, and an image from that crazy photo shoot of me covered in Post-it notes. So remember, go to nonobvious.com/AMA to get the additional materials, to download a copy of the PDF with all of the trends, and also to get all of the slides and everything like that. You can get everything there. And that's my personal email address. So I will just say thank you for being part of this, part of the event. Thank you for being here. I hope you enjoy the rest of the virtual summit. And let me bring on my good friend, Angela, back to the stream to say a final thank you for being here and any sort of instructions for what to do next. So anything else they should know, Angela? Anything I forgot?
I believe you have covered it as far as up until the magical hour of 4 when we're going to head over to Zoom, but we're good for right now, right?
Okay. Yes, we are. So just to remind you where you can watch the rest of the videos for this summit, if you go straight to this URL, you will see a playlist. You'll see the latest video at the top, and then you'll see a playlist right underneath it for all of the other videos, all premiering at different times. The first one, we are slightly over, so the first one has just premiered already, but you can watch it streaming on demand right now at that URL. So please join us there. Thank you for being part of this. I'm going to end this broadcast and we'll head off to the next one, and we will see you later today for those sessions or for the Zoom behind the scenes or for the after event tomorrow morning at the breakfast. Thank you for being part of it. Angela, thank you for everything with organizing it. It has been fun so far, and we have lots more fun to go.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Rohit.